I'm just normal dad. Like when my son would have friends come over, he said one time, he's like, so, because obviously they were fans, and he goes, and this is the man. I'm like, yeah, I'm just James's dad, you know?
Welcome to the In Your Home podcast. I'm your host, Brett Rosenthal. This podcast is about real people and real homes in Philadelphia and other cities near you. As a realtor in Philadelphia, I get to see all types of homes and meet all kinds of people, and I want to share these experiences with everybody. Tons of unique homes and some amazing people is what you will hear and see. If you like what you hear, follow us on your favorite streaming platform.
Hey everybody, welcome to the In Your Home podcast. My name is Brett Rosenthal, back for another episode. Today we have a special guest on National Unplugged Day, which obviously we're not unplugging. I'm going to let him introduce yourself. You may or may not recognize him right now, but you definitely recognize him typically. He's going to tell you about himself.
Well, thank you for having me, Brett.
Thank you.
My name is Jamie Paye, otherwise known as the Thephillysportsguy. And on Unplugged Day, I am uncolored. No color included today. Incognito, maybe.
Are you going to be painted at some point today or no?
No, not today. I do double duty tomorrow, though, interestingly enough, for the Flyers and the Wings.
Okay. So, I guess, how did this all come about? First of all, is this your job? Is this your full-time job?
This is now what I do for a living. I used to own a chimney and masonry contracting company, and I've done a lot of different things. I was one of those guys that doesn't know what he wants to be when he grew up. And I had a fairly successful, chimney company and masonry company. I'm a good stonemason by trade. What would happen is that I couldn't find anybody that I could get to work, and I would lose all my good people to much larger companies. So I had to wind up closing the business down because it's either I could do it all the work or, just a struggle throughout it all. So right at that time, it was COVID, and I was working with a production company, and they knew a little bit about the fact that I would get painted up for Eagles games. And they said, hey, well, we're going to send, why don't you why don't you do that more frequently? Like, let's maybe start a podcast, because Jamie has thoughts. I would always, you'd give me what your situation was, and I'd have a thought about it, and how you get out of it or what to do. And ultimately, I went to an Eagles game and got recognized, and they put me in a commercial. And once they saw me as the persona of the Philly sports guy, they're like, that energy is amazing. You're like the Philly sports guy. You should see if that name's available. Wow. And it was. And they said, if you want to try to do this, we'll teach you how to do the social media. And they kind of taught me a little bit and then threw me to the wolves. And ultimately, it was like going to Eagles games. I went to the draft, had a great time at the draft. It was the first time, other than when it was in Philly, it was the first time that I had been to the draft as a super fan. And geeked out on it completely. Was doing interviews, was having a great time with people, and it started to really grow from there.
Okay.
And ultimately, 6 years later, here it is. I'm still doing it, and
So it's been 6 years.
It's been 6 years.
Do you paint your own face, or does someone paint it for you?
I paint my own.
It's good.
It's funny because I get some interest from even the Philadelphia School of Art reached out to me. They're like, we would like for you to come down and talk to the kids because, we find that you're like a great artist. And I'm like, I'm not an artist. I paint my face. They're like, well, you think about that. You were using the same canvas over and over again, and you have so many different looks.
Yeah.
That's actually something amazing. And I'm like, really? All I do is I make lines, I put out the base, and then I cut in. You know what I mean? It makes it look just kind of as unique as it is. But it's also, when you think of face painting and people that do face painting, they're not as meticulous. Mm-hmm. They throw it on and that's whatever it looks like. in my case, I'm like very anal. I get it in my ears. It's just, I don't like having any regular skin shown. And that makes a big difference on camera. And that's why the camera seems to find me pretty frequently.
How long does it typically take to paint it?
About an hour. It's like, it actually takes me about a half hour for my hair and then a half hour for the makeup.
Painting the hair?
So the hair, obviously, I bleach my hair. My hair's the same color as my eyebrows, so it's pretty dark. But I have to bleach it because the red and the blue, it's a hairspray. It doesn't get shown very well in dark hair. So, the orange does, the green does, but the red and the blues don't. So, and coming into Philly season, I use a lot of red and blue spray paints or hairspray. So I have to keep it blonde.
Okay, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. You know what, though? It's part of the fun of doing this. It's, when I initially started this, it was, listen, it's, when you paint your face for a living, you better get the joke, and that's one of the things that I understand. I don't take myself too seriously. I'm not the best fan out there. I'm just a fan like everybody else. I just wear different makeup. I show my support in different ways. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people like it, some people don't. Most people do. And, especially now when you have a generation that is so interested in doing what they want to do, it actually resonates with them. So I have not only just the kids who like the mohawk and they like the face paint, you also have the 20-somethings that are starting to try to find their way, and they see this 50-year-old guy who's living his life the way he wants to live it and going to sporting events for a living. It's like, who would have ever thought that you could make a living going to sporting events without being I'm John Clark. You have to be on television, or you're a writer of some sort. That's how these guys get paid and go to all these events, but they don't get to be a fan. I get to be a fan, and it's been a struggle to make money doing this, but now it's starting to pay off.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask you, who pays you? What type of companies or what type of?
So I get different sponsorships. During football season is my biggest time, so I usually will have Tick Pick has been one that's recently done me. I have hers, Dietz and Watson's, Verizon, different local spots. I also do public speaking.
Okay.
So I'll go to different schools and talk about a number of different topics, starting with living your passion, or I'm also very big as fans against bullying and fans against violence. So I'll go there and I'll discuss bullying with students, middle school or high schooler. So I have these different programs that go there and try to change some of the thought processes of, because when kids talk about bullying, they usually bring in a police officer. Well, you don't get arrested for bullying. So it doesn't resonate the same, where sports does. So, and it's not just something that I can do in Philadelphia. I can do it around the country. I can go to a school in Tampa Bay and go Birds, and they're going to boo. And immediately that's a great segue to start talking about, hey, that this is exactly what we're talking about, bullying. So it's an interesting life.
It sounds it. So have you ever got bullied online?
All the time. It's when the haters start to come that you realize that you made it. Because the haters are more loyal than the followers.
Yep.
Even as I came here, less than 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation, as I'll put it, with a real estate agent. So when you reached out to me, I thought that I'm wondering if he was going to be here. You know what I mean? So that we could actually talk out loud about it. And just because it always amazes me when somebody doesn't like what I do, because there's two ways you could go about it. You could not like what I do and block me and never have to see anything that I do. Just never be involved with it. Or you could mention something about it. And the people that mention something about it, I find out they're either jealous or they're angry about something else.
Okay.
Haters are haters for a whole bunch of different reasons, but never really the reason of you doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. So when you meet people out and you're not painted, what's the percentage, would you say, of people who recognize who you are and versus
About
have no idea who you are?
25%
Recognize you?
that recognize me. I would say that some will start to recognize me more because of my voice.
Yeah.
I have a fairly deep voice, and
Yeah.
when I start talking, it's funny when I'm like in a supermarket and there's a kid who I could tell knows me because I mean, obviously my face looks the same. It's just painted. But they're looking, they can't quite figure it out. And then I'll say, and then I'll just, like, as I'm like talking to myself or whatever, I'll be like, what's up, everybody? And then he knows. You can tell the face changes. Like, Dad, or Mom, you know, like, that's the guy. And I hear that all the time. It's like, are you that TikTok guy? Yeah, that's me. So, how many other people, like when I'm painted, it's like when I get asked that, and I'm like, how many other people are going to paint their face this way? But it's, it makes it a lot of fun. You know, I said, and most of the time it's positive. It's usually only online that people will say negative stuff. And most of the time, if they do say negative stuff to my face, we talk for a few minutes, and they realize that I'm just a normal guy.
Okay. So where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Swarthmore, Delaware County. It was just like it. You know, I went to Ridley High School and went to Archmere for a little while. I went to private school, went to public school. Just normal upbringing, just like anything else, I guess. You know, middle class.
Never left this area.
So I did. I mean, So I joined the Navy right out of high school and spent 3 years there. So traveled around a little bit there, was stuck to a ship, the USS Portland, which was a land sea dock, LSD. And so our ship was made to sink. And then after that, I traveled around the country installing computer systems for Kmart back when they were a thing.
Okay.
There was this new thing that just came out called an intranet. So they went from a satellite system to an internet, and that's kind of what I did in the service. So I did it for Kmart's for a little while. And then, again, just floated around. Was, every bit. I mean, I have a hotel restaurant management degree.
Okay.
So I was a restaurant manager for a little while and bartended everywhere. I worked at the Spectrum for a good amount of time with Aramark at the Ovations Club, and then worked backstage for concerts and things like that, and sold cars. Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just, all right, what am I doing next?
Yeah.
So once I got this kind of fit a lot of different holes because, I mean, I've always wanted to act. I took a lot of acting classes, back when I was in high school and even some in college. And it was just like, do I want to go to L.A. and try to make it there? It's like you hear so many sad stories, and it's just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to live my life here. And, my father was in concrete, so I learned really young how to be a mason. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that was my last job, being a chimney sweep and a stonemason. And it was like, I'm 50 years old. Picking up rocks and putting them down sucks. Although it's a great work and it's a dying trade.
It is. It's hard to get, though. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's why, stonemasons charge a tremendous amount of money. It's just, I don't want to do that. I think of these old Italian guys that are out there still working, which is wonderful. I'm glad, that they're able to do it at like 65, 70 years old. But I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. So what do you like about living in this area?
That it's a very real area.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia is, it's very blue collar, and it's a working town. It's a union town. So they want to be together as a team, kind of in that regard. And they wear their hearts for their sports teams on their sleeve. It's a big deal. So it's and it doesn't matter the team. If the team's doing well, the whole city rallies around that, and you don't have that in any other place. I think about how could the Philly Sports Guy work in other cities. You can't do it in New York. There's too many teams. You can maybe do it in Boston, but it's more white collar up there. It's not necessarily blue collar. This is a working class town. You know what I mean? And you have to. One of the sayings that I say all the time is you have to bring it every play of every game all day, and that's what they do out there. I mean, people hate going to work, but they do it every day, and they struggle through it, and they come back home, and they live their lives, and then they get up and go to work the next day. And that's a mindset that we want, not just, to be able to survive, but what we want from our sports teams. And I take on a little bit of that persona. Like, I'm not going to quit because somebody told me that I should quit. I'm not going to do the things that you told me to do because you think that's the right idea. It's more important to represent Philly the way Philly should be represented. And even from the naysayers, can't deny that I definitely put in the work. So that makes sense. It makes it more of a challenge when you do have the naysayers that they're like, "What are you doing this? You're a jerk." Am I? Okay, I raise thousands of dollars for charities. I go to sporting events and I support my team as loudly as I can, as often as I can. What did I do to you that made you so bitter? Nobody has an answer to that question. It becomes jealousy. Like, oh, well, why can't I be that guy? Really, I'm living the life that they would like to live. And it's like I heard from all these different rich people that say, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. When I found out I loved going to sporting events, I tried to figure out, how do I make money doing this? And I've created the first ever professional fan.
Sure.
Yeah. There's no manual for me to read to try to figure it out. There was nothing that says, hey, this is it. You got to just do it. And so I'm doing it.
Would you ever write a book?
I would. It's funny because I get asked that sometimes, and it's like, it's like a sailor, a chimney sweep, and a sports fan who walk into a bar. Like that would be the name of that book. Just because there's been so many different stories, and I told you I worked at the Ovations Club, so I learned. My mother worked at the Ovations Club. My grandmother worked there when it was the Blue Line Club. So sports was always in my life. I had some of the Broad Street bullies come over to our house to play pinochle with my mother and my grandmother. So, and they would bring their kids. Their kids and I would be playing down in the basement, and they would be, playing cards up there, and so I was always around the teams, and I was always going to games. And I made, between my junior and senior year, because I knew I was going into the Navy, I made enough money to go backpacking through Europe. So in 1989, I got to go. I got to go see the wall before it came down, but I got to go into East Germany. So I have a lot of these stories that are amazing stories of a full life that I've gotten to live all the way up to this point that could be shared.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, because it would make for a long book, though. Yeah. It's not easy to write a book. Writers have a different skill set.
You need a lot of time to.
Yeah, and it's. I'm working on it, but it's slow going.
Yeah. So, other than realtors that bully you on the internet, what else would you say you don't like about this area if you had to pick one?
What I don't like about this area is, I like the idea of the city, but I don't like people on top of people on top of people. I guess I kind of, it amazes me how people can live that way. I need a vehicle. I want to be able to drive away sometimes. City life is a little different here. So if I was to live in the city, you couldn't have a car, really. I mean, you could, but it's not necessary. And those are the types of things that I find a little different. beyond that, I just really love this area in comparison to some of the other cities that are out there. I mean, I've lived in Detroit, and Detroit's a great town. I've lived in Cleveland for a little while.
You like Detroit? You like it?
I do like Detroit.
Yeah.
Detroit's very similar to Philly.
Okay.
Same thing with Cleveland, very similar to Philly. They're like working towns that, care about their sports teams and have had very similar experiences in sports, that we've had. Yeah. So like they get, championships every once in a great while. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's those types of DC, whole different worlds. It's like it wasn't the type of spot that I could thrive in because, I already know when I walk in, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I don't ever try to be. In that place, it gets almost intimidating, to like trying to hold a conversation with some of them. And it's just like, you know what? I'm going to just keep my mouth shut so I don't get to talk much, which is fine because really I talk a lot anyways.
So how many games a year would you say you go to if you had to?
About 160 games a year.
Really?
Yeah, we figure
times a week you think is that on average?
8, some to 3 games a week about.
And how do you do you pay for the tickets or?
Yeah, so it's a balance. I will say that there are times that I get gifted these tickets either through sponsors or through friends that just want me to go to the games. There are other times where I got to buy those tickets, so
you don't buy season tickets. You just
no, like I don't like. It would be easier for me to buy season tickets actually, especially for the Eagles. But I'm still on the list. I've been on the list since 20,000. I think I'm around 6,000 now. But because of where I want to sit, it's not really worth it for me to try to do it. It's easier for me to try to find each game. Plus, I go to every Eagles game, so it's not just a home game; it's an away game. So, like I'll be in Brazil for that game. I will, be home for the next game. I've missed 2 games in the last 5 years, so it's, and that was because one game happened during the World Series, and playoffs always trumps regular season. And the other one is Christmas because I do have a couple of kids and. Santa Claus does not wait for football games.
How many kids do you have?
2.
Do they like sports like you do, or
no?
Really?
No, not at all. My son is starting to get a little bit more involved. He's 15 years old, and he likes it because he likes what it is that I do.
Okay.
So he'll get involved that way. My daughter, no interest.
Is she embarrassed by what you do?
No, they're not embarrassed. It's more of she's 13 years old. She doesn't like her parents now anyways.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. They don't flip out that you're on TikTok all over the place.
No. In fact, my son is not really into social media very much. My daughter is. So, and my daughter secretly likes what I do. She just won't really announce it. She shows her mother all the time, like, oh, look, there's what Dad did today. And, so it's fun that way, like in that regards. But, but I'm just normal dad. Like when my son would have friends come over, he said one time, he's like, so, because obviously they were fans. And he goes, and this is the man. I'm like, yeah, I'm just James's dad, I'm not the man, you know what I mean? You don't have to introduce me that way. In fact, I'd rather you not. So, but it makes it, again, it's a unique experience because I didn't have a famous parent, and that's what they look at me as. They look at me as famous, and I'm not famous. I don't consider myself famous, maybe locally famous, but when you're talking about these kids, when they talk about their classmates and such like that, their peers, it's a whole different situation. So there's been a couple of conversations I've had, like, listen, you don't need to become friends, or don't try to become friends with somebody by using me as the in. Become friends with somebody by being your own man. You have to do these things on your own. I'll always have your back. And if you need to pull the card, Thephillysportsguy's son, do it,
Right.
but don't always go to that well. It's life is hard enough. You don't need to start getting bullied because your dad is who he is.
Right.
So, and that's been a tough lesson to teach because I never learned it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been fun and challenging to be a parent and do this.
Okay. Is there anywhere in Philadelphia or any place you like going to, like some of your favorite things to do, other than the sporting events?
Obviously, I mean, I spend a lot of time down at the sports complex. I love going to Ralph's. Ralph's is a great spot in the city. Everybody likes to talk about the best cheesesteak in the city. I love cheesesteaks, don't get me wrong, and I can eat a cheesesteak from Pat's and Gino's. Actually, I prefer Gino's over Pat's if I'm going to choose between those two. Mm-hmm. However, the best cheesesteak place around me is Liberty. The Liberty Tavern. You go over there and you get the best cheesesteak around. So I like kind of doing that. But I like staying local. When I do go out, I usually I'm a bar hopper. Right. So I like to go to different places. I just have a few drinks and Uber home because I don't like to drive when I have to go through municipalities because sometimes I like to have a cocktail or four.
Is there any like bar that stands out that you like going to? Or?
I used to love this place called Bar Noir, and that place ended probably it's going on a decade now, which is such a shame. I used to love that place, but I like going on Rittenhouse Square.
Okay.
Some of those. And then I have like friends that come into town, and we'll go like to the Adams Mark or the not the Adams Mark. Where did they invent the old fashions? That was invented in Philadelphia at
in Rittenhouse. You saying?
Yeah, not in Rittenhouse. It was in a hotel.
Okay.
Anyways, you can Google it and find out exactly. Okay. It was, but it's so like we'll go to some of those different places. I'm more of a dive bar guy, so like I'll go to different dive bars and kind of do that way. And I like going in incognito. Like
I was gonna say, did you ever go to Rittenhouse Square with paint?
No, and I can imagine how that. Actually, in Rittenhouse Square, I'd probably get a couple of side eyes, but not necessarily get a lot of engagement.
Okay, I'd be curious to see you walk in like one of those restaurants right on the square. In paint.
Like walking into Devon, with face paint on is going to be, without like a game happening or something like that would be probably an interesting way of going about things. But there's certain places that I can go. Obviously, when I go anywhere after a game, I'm working because when you go into that bar and your face painted up, people want to take pictures and things like that because they've seen it. They've seen me on Instagram or TikTok, and you're like, you're that guy. So then they want to ask some questions. And once you actually get me in front of you and I'm not being inundated with a ton of people asking questions, I get questions. People want to find out, like, well, how did you start this? Like, what really is your motivation in doing some of this? So it makes it interesting, and it's I guess it's people say that it's just attention seeking. It's not. It's it is what it is. This is what I do for a living. Do clowns in the circus, are they attention seeking? No, it's not. It's just a job. So, and I look at it just that way. It's the makeup. When the makeup's on, I'm at work. When the makeup's off, I'm I get to relax a little bit. Yeah. I get to do fun things like this.
Yeah. So with all the talk about like the Sixers maybe moving to Center City, what do you think of that idea?
I am not a fan. I feel like, I know that they're talking about this place is going to be like it's going to cost $1 billion. I just don't believe that the infrastructure is really set for fans to park in other places and then take public transportation into the city. So, and they're going to have to really figure that portion out. I understand. Like, I feel like that this is a big play here, that they are trying to hold Wells Fargo to lower our rent or something like that. I'm not sure that there will ever be groundbreaking for that. That being said, if they're going to try to spend that money, I think it's going to not necessarily work out in their best interest. And the owners, they own franchises for business. They understand some of this. Right. They're not going to invest the money. I thought that originally it was supposed to be $1.5 billion. Half of that was to build the stadium. The other half was to build, the infrastructure to SEPTA, because that's really where the money's got to go. But what guy is just going to invest, $750 million into somebody else's business? Just don't see, Harris Group doing that. And I think that's going to be the major holdup.
Okay.
So because they don't have the parking now for the city, and now try to put 20,000 people in there, and how are they getting there, and where are they parking? I could just see that being a big mess.
Right. So if you didn't put that there, what would you do with that space that's basically been horrible like forever since I have known Phil? That would you have any ideas of things you could do there?
Well, I think that you could do some type of sports complex there, and a high rise. I mean, I think of that. Like, why wouldn't you just do like Madison Square Garden, something of that regard? I mean, it seems like there's no shortage of office buildings, and people are, companies are always coming into the city to do that type of stuff. That's what I would do there. Put another, stick in the sky, and see how high it's going to go. I think that's really your best bet there. I mean, I don't, other than that, it's like could you make it a concert venue? I don't know. You got places right down the street from there. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you wouldn't need to do that. I know the area. I know that space right there, and it's always been kind of, make it a park then. Just put grass there.
Anyway.
It's just, there's enough people that walk around there, and there's enough people that live there. That's a little bit of grass and maybe a tree wouldn't hurt.
Did you ever go to the fashion district that's there?
I have. It's,
it's probably the worst name for what's actually there.
Well, I mean, it used to be the gallery, and listen, and the gallery now is kind of like the Granite Run Mall. Like every time you walked into the Granite Run Mall, for the 5 years before it finally closed, there was nobody there.
Yeah.
Malls are like a thing of the past anymore.
Kind of, yeah.
And it's just unless you have like the Mall of America or the King of Prussia Plaza, there's not really much, to be able to do with that. So I don't know that has the same appeal anymore of that. But, and what are you going to tear it down and build something else there? I mean,
I don't know. It's just ever since I've been born, anything that was there just was never that exciting.
I mean, it used to be. Like, you think about Gimbals and Wanamaker's and things like that were larger than life department stores, and now it's blah. You know what I mean? They're going to do their shopping off of Amazon. People don't do the shopping like they used to anymore.
Where do you get your paint?
Mehron. Mehron is the paint that I use. Mehron. It's a stage paint.
Okay.
I spend a lot of money on my paint because I want it breathable. It's, when it gets hot, especially when I'm doing Phillies games in the summer, I want it to be able to breathe so that it doesn't sweat off my face or anything like that. It's not waterproof. So if it's raining, I'm going to get wet, and I melt in the rain. But beyond that, it's really, it's just a good paint that stays on. And after wearing it for 16 hours, I still look like I had it just put on.
When you shower and it comes right off?
Comes right off. 10 minutes in the shower, an hour to put on, 10 minutes to take off.
Well, you shouldn't have to use filters for social media like everyone uses, because you pretty much are wearing a filter.
The filters. So I'm not allowed, when I'm painted up, I'm not allowed into any casino. I couldn't go through the airport because of security, because of facial recognition.
Okay.
It will not pick up the face, which becomes challenging when I do like the drafts and things like that. If I want to try to get credentials for the draft, can't do it because the facial recognition doesn't work. So same thing with casinos. If I have an event at a casino, they have to assign me personal security.
Okay.
Not that I'm going to do anything special. It's just that the camera won't see me. And I guess which is a good thing to do at a casino if you could be kind of invisible, but doesn't help me win any better.
No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't.
So obviously you're a real estate agent.
I am.
We have not spoken about real estate very much here. What got you into doing a podcast?
So I don't like talking about real estate. I'm kidding. No, I was invited on many podcasts with other agents in other parts of the country, and I enjoyed doing it. I actually learned a lot from them. And what was happening is once I was on these shows, I was being found like in the search engines, like really high up. So it started like benefiting my business, and I'm like, I should just do my own, because that'll be constant, like getting seen and stuff like that. And it's worked. Like between like if someone types Philadelphia Realtor on Google, I now pop up like first or second.
That's awesome.
And I didn't do anything other than stuff like this to do it, I think. So, I mean, I get good reviews and stuff like that, but it just helped me grow. And I kind of like talking to like people in the area now. And I actually just branched out to talking to people out of the area to see the difference maybe between other cities and Philadelphia. But yeah, that's really the only reason. We do talk about real estate sometimes. If I have another realtor on, we talk more about real estate, but I kind of like talking about just other stuff because it's like real estate's my job. It's not my life. And
right.
So I like talking about both. We had a matchmaker on the show, which had nothing to do with real estate. And when you got here, we started talking a little bit about your matchmaker idea.
Yeah.
Tell everyone how yours is different.
So I have a friend who I've been helping. She wanted to do like a Philadelphia matchmaking one. She's a single girl, and we've known each other for a little while through the Phillies and different sports. And she wanted to come up with something different, and like finding matches. People matching with each other isn't easy.
Okay.
People don't go out to the bars anymore, and you're usually swiping left or swipe right. Some people, and then when you do finally get to the point that you want to have a date, you usually will go out to lunch or go out to dinner, and you have a more of a formal setting on how you're supposed to match. My idea is put two people together and have them go on a little bit of a quest. Not necessarily, you're not hiking or anything like that, but you're doing active events rather than going out to dinner and just kind of figuring each other out. Like you get to have to work with each other to either get through a process or see how, and I feel like that's part of what's missing.
Okay.
Because people are so busy in their lives that they don't come up with unique ideas for dates. It's that's the one thing I hear about guys all the time. The guys don't ever want to plan a date. It's always the woman. The woman kind of wants the guy to take charge, and that's part of it. So if you took that out of the mix, at least for the first date, obviously I feel like that you can't just put two people together and hope that it works. You got to also watch them both. So it's, literally you have like a personal chauffeur, you know what I mean? So you get to get driven around and you get to go on these, this active dates. And at the end, you could decide whether you want to do it again or not, and it's a service. So it's not like, the date's being paid for by both people, and obviously there's a fee.
Okay. For the person that you would be planning the date and coming.
Correct.
Okay.
Exactly. Now, I'm not like, if we're going to go get something to eat, I ain't
You'd bail it out.
You know, like I'm not there on top of them.
Right.
You know, but it's like having your personal Uber and doing a date that you don't know what's about to happen. It's kind of a, dating meets The Amazing Race a little bit.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, hey, here is your task. You have to go do this. And you get to experience that. And, like I said, along with being safe.
Is she going to start it up or?
We're in the process. We are in process.
Do you have a name yet or anything? Or?
We haven't figured that part out yet. So, because then everything's in a name.
Yeah.
So you can't call it Philadelphia Matchmaker.
Nah.
It's just, that's not enough. You want to have something that's more universal and unique. Something that drives people to go and be like, okay, this is something I may be interested in doing.
Would you ever take a date to a Philly sporting event?
I try not to, because any date that I have, and I have a girlfriend, so it's a little different in that regards, but
Is she the one that's starting the matchmaking service?
No.
Okay.
No. She becomes photographer.
Okay.
So, and that's really hard on somebody. I'm not trying to put somebody to work. So most of the time I try to leave her out of it. And during football games, she can't even handle it. It's way too much.
Yeah.
It's like I'm all over the place. I take thousands of pictures, anywhere from 1,000 to 3,000 or 5,000 pictures a game for football. Baseball is probably somewhere around 750. So the playoffs is like 2,000-3,000.
What do you use? Just a camera, just your phone, or
they take the pictures, their phones.
Okay.
Like it takes me an hour to leave a football game at the end of the game, because if we win, the Eagles fans want to take pictures with me. If we lose, the opposing fans want to take pictures with me. And it doesn't matter the stadium. Every stadium, it takes me about an hour to leave. So, like,
if you didn't do what you did and weren't who you are, would you then take someone to a sporting event?
Yeah. I mean, like Valentine's
I'm out of the
Day.
Sixers games tonight, so.
Yeah, as a Valentine's Day, I took her and I didn't get painted up because I didn't. It was Valentine's Day.
Where'd you go?
We went to the Sixers game.
And did people?
So there were a couple people that recognized me. The people that recognize me are the ones that see me all the time.
Okay.
So, or follow me. So we got to our seat, and there was a kid who was a couple seats down, and they're like, "You're that guy."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I guess the mohawk gives it away. So, but I mean, most of the time, it's like when I'm not painted up, nobody's got the same type of interest than when I am painted up.
Yeah.
So, it goes back and forth. There are other times where I can go somewhere and they're like, "Oh, you're that guy." Like I play darts. I'm in a dart league, and the other teams know who I am, but they don't ever see me painted up.
Yeah.
And they have lots of questions, and they're like, "It's so cool to meet you and actually have a drink with you, and not, be all that. You don't have to be this crazy guy. You're just Jamie."
Yeah. Where you live, do you rent or do you buy, or do you own it?
Right now, I rent,
Okay.
and my living room is Dolan's Bar, so I live above Dolan's Bar in Ridley Park. It's
How long have you lived there?
I just moved in there in August. Yeah, I sold my house. I had a house in Ridley last January.
Okay.
It was that time.
Yeah. I was going to ask you like when you bought the house compared to when you got out, like how much the prices went up. Well, I guess the question is, how long did you live there in the house?
I lived in the house for 10 years.
Right.
I bought it for like 120-ish, and then I wound up selling it for, I think, close to 200.
Yeah.
So obviously 10 years was big, and I didn't even get it at the prime spot. I was probably about 8 months late to that party. So had I done that, I probably could have gotten 250, 260.
He just had enough.
Yeah. It was with COVID and everything else. It was so hard. And it's like, all right, then you try to start fixing things up, and then more things break. And it's just, it starts to become, all right, when is enough to do this? So where would be the next up-and-coming spot in the city?
That's a tough one. Like totally new out of that. It's nothing special right now.
Well, I can imagine like Brewery Town took a while for it to...
Yeah, and it never got... Brewery Town, like 5 years... When I first got into real estate, everyone was like, Brewery Town, it's going to be great. And it got a little better, but I feel like it stalled. And now it never really... Like, they need to build more stores and restaurants, and I think it could be. I'm trying to think. I mean... My dream would be to have that second stadium thing that just came out where they're going to build and make that whole area into like a really nice neighborhood. I don't know if it will happen. I don't know if that will even be built, but even if it is, I don't know if that'll make the neighborhood. But if they were able to somehow make the Navy Yard and make it into housing and...
Well, and I wonder, so obviously they're doing a tremendous amount of work in that old area that had the explosion for the oil refinery, and of course, that's also right next to the water fields, is what I'll call them over there. Like I remember when those hills weren't so high, but I got to imagine they're leveling all that, and that's are they going to put? I thought that was going to be living, right. Like that people are going to be able to put boats in the water there and things like that.
That would be nice.
I mean, I can imagine that area being really sweet.
Yeah.
So. But that's the only spot that I see on a daily basis that I think that could possibly be, and around Temple. Like you see different places that are starting to pop there, and that Temple's trying to buy that area out, but there's just too many people, I feel. And
it's taking a while for them to, it's a lot of work to buy out everyone out.
Right.
Basically. And then the Delaware, like they're building stuff at one point that was a lot better than it is, and if they could somehow get that together.
I feel like that's what the union's doing in Chester. Yeah. They're trying to revitalize Chester to a certain extent. You can't go too far into the city because the city is itself, but that waterfront is really starting to change, starting with, obviously now they're putting, they got the stadium, they're going to have that new sports venue that's out there and such. So they're investing the money, at least in the waterfront. And then it's a trickle-down effect, I feel. Like it starts to move inland.
My first I think that might have been my second real estate client when I started. They live in New York, and they contacted me about buying in Chester. And we went there, and I was like, why do they want to buy here? And they've since bought about 12 properties there, and I still say, why do they want to buy there? But what they're doing there, it's going to eventually, and they're actually even where they are buying, they're renting them out, and they're doing pretty well with them.
There are certain streets in Chester that nature took back over. Yeah. And ultimately, if you have the right type of finances, you could purchase entire city blocks and start to really do stuff with that. I mean, and that's what's sort of happening with the union a little bit, because they're kind of using the bridge as their line. So they're going everything this way. And once they start to go this way, there's a lot of space that's right there that they're going to be able to change over.
Yeah.
And I feel like so Chester isn't, and everything's still cheap. You could still buy some of these shells for like $6,000 and $8,000 if you do it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I played in real estate a little bit, and Delaware County has what's called a judicial sale, different than a sheriff's sale, where you could buy these houses free and clear. And Chester has 6 pages worth of houses and properties that you could purchase for like $1,800, $2,000. Those numbers have gone up now since I've been there, but still, like, it's $4,000 to buy a shell. It's in Chester, though, and you've got to tear it down and rebuild it again. So you better have some finances to do that. I did not. It's like, oh, I like this idea, and then something happens. You're like, oh, okay, I don't like it as much as I thought I did.
Yeah, they've done well. They've had a couple tenants that stop paying. That becomes a problem, but overall, and they just keep accumulating. Whenever they call me, I'm like, do you want to find something in Philly? They're like, no, Chester. It's just tons of Chester. They like it.
Hey, some people like being in the bigger fish in a small pond.
Yep.
And that's kind of what that becomes.
That's exactly. Anyway, so thank you so much for coming on. I learned a lot about everything with sports and Chester and Delaware County and basically how you started doing this out of nowhere, and you could pretty much do anything. Thanks so much for coming on. Let everybody know how they could get a hold of you or find you.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. This is my first real estate show, so this is great. I usually tell people that you could find me, really, if you Google the Philly Sports Guy, you'll find it. You can Painted Philadelphia fan. Usually I show right up there too. I'm on every social media as the Philly Sports Guy, so you can definitely find me. Or if you're on Facebook, you could try to follow me using my name, Jamie Paye, which is really hard to spell, but it's you can find me that way too. And like I said, all you have to do is look a little bit, and you'll see that I'm all over the place.
Yeah, you can't miss it.
Any sporting event, feel free to come up and say hello, take a picture. I'm not somebody who is, I never turn anybody down for a picture. So it's always fun to deal with the crowd and then deal with the other fans.
Definitely. All right. Thanks again.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. See you.